Hey, I hope you're doing well. A few weeks ago, I gave myself a challenge, and that was to create a simple but effective crypto trading strategy that I would then transform into a fully automated trading bot, and all that had to be free. So in the previous episode, I presented the trading strategy the bot is going to be based on. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend watching it first. Today, I'm going to present the Python script that will operate the buy and sell orders according to that strategy. That is to say, the core of the trading bot. In the next and final episode, I will show how one can host this trading bot for free on an AWS server and how to make it run itself fully automatically. I am making these videos as detailed and pedagogical as possible so they can be accessible by anyone. As usual, all the codes that I present can be downloaded from our GitHub. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to join our community Discord. All this is for free. Links below. Don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us a lot. Enjoy. A few starting words so everything is clear. The Python script I'm about to present is the code that will link to my trading account, download the market information about the coin I will trade, encode the trading strategy, fetch my account balances, and finally execute the buy and sell orders according to that strategy. So my plan for today is to walk you through this step by step. There are actually quite a few subtleties when creating a trading code like this, so I want to make sure I present them to you neatly. An important point that I want to make right now is that this script does what I mentioned previously only once per execution. And to make it become a fully automated trading bot, one needs to automatize this process. But personally, I don't want my personal computer to have to run all day long for months to execute this strategy. So that's why I'm going to show how to host it on a server in the next episode. And finally, please be aware that none of this is financial advice and trading can involve high risk of losing capital. Okay, enough chitty chatting. Let's get to it. So I've designed this trading bot to work on the KuCoin exchange. So to use its API, I'm using the KuCoin-Python library. There actually exists quite a few Python libraries to work with the KuCoin API. There is, for example, a Python-KuCoin library, but this was created by a third party. There is also this Meta API called CCXT, which is very nice to use. I've made a video about that. I'll link it down below. But for this journey of mine, I wanted to start from scratch and also avoid using any third-party software. So that's why I'm going for this KuCoin-Python. If you need to install it, you can install it with pip using this command in your terminal, for example. If you don't have an account yet on KuCoin and you would like to make one, you can use our registration link down below. It helps this channel a lot and it will give you 10% discount on your trading fees, which can make a difference. If it turns out that you already have a KuCoin account but you would like to create a new one to benefit from these discounts, you are actually allowed of up to 3 accounts on KuCoin with the same KYC. You might need to create the new one with a different email address. You can see that what I'm importing from this KuCoin library is 3 classes. You could call them clients if you want. The user is what will allow us to fetch information about our trading account. The market one is what will allow us to get some market information about the coins we're trading. And the last one, the trade one, is what we are going to use to place our market orders to do the buy and the sell. But the important step to use these clients is to authenticate with our trading account on KuCoin. And that is done using an API key from which we will fetch these credentials, and then the code will be allowed to communicate with my KuCoin account. So here you could create an API key from your trading account and put this information here. By the way, this is confidential information. You should never communicate to a third party because that will grant them access to your account. But for the sake of this video, I'm showing that now, and I will delete that API key afterwards. I will guide you through the process of getting this API key in the next episode, but there is a nice feature of KuCoin that I want to already highlight, and that's the possibility of creating sub-accounts. So if I come to my account, you can see that there are the typical accounts found on an exchange, my main account, my trading account. But what I want to point out is this feature here, sub-account. That means you can create some sub-accounts that are completely independent from your main and trading account. What I will do is to deploy this trading bot in the next episode using a sub account. And I will show the details of how to create such a sub account. I think that's a very nice feature because what it means is that the trading bot is completely independent of all the other trading and investing activities I can do. So if you want, in some sense, if anything goes wrong to the trading bot for whatever reason, this cannot impact the rest of my account. That also means that I can send the amount I want my trading bot to trade with and let it only use that. It keeps things quite nicely structured and separated, and I like that. Okay, you can see here that I've put a little print hello and then a sysexit. This sysexit is to stop the code at that point here. And what I've done is to put some prints and sysexit along this code so I can highlight what happens step by step. And as we go, I will remove those exits, those sysexit, and clean the code of the prints. So first one is just to highlight that even though I'm typing Python, this code is written in Python 3. I'm just using an alias here. So let's just run it so we see that everything goes well. And indeed, we get our print of hello as was written here. So let me clean that and move to the next step. In this section, we're going to deal with downloading the data about the coin we're going to trade. You can see here that the base currency that I'm using is Ethereum and the code currency is USDT, following the strategy that I presented in the previous episode. The time frame of this strategy is of 1 day, but feel free to change that if you want to experiment for yourself. Then to download the market information, one could actually use this market client and this method called getKline in the spirit of what we've done in my backtest videos and all of that. But there can be a problem with this. This type of caller function is actually quite heavy, and it is also quite restricted by KuCoin on the amount of calls one can do per minute. Technically speaking, for this strategy that is on a 1 day time frame, one could totally use this function without any problems. But since I wanted to start from scratch and do things as neatly as possible, I am using the more professional route, which is to make some URL request. That means that we will download the information by actually downloading it from a web page. Typically, if you wanted to do a higher frequency trading strategies that make several calls per minute, you would have no choice but to go to this route. And since I'm working on things like that as well, I might as well do it right now. Okay, so there's a few things I want to highlight. So the beginning of the URL, as you can see, is the KuCoin API. That's the website which contains all the information. And then we will access a couple of pages on this website for our trading bot. Let me point out that the starting date when we're doing this call needs to be given in seconds. So that's why I'm converting. And I want to fetch information every day up to 2 years in the past. Remember that this trading strategy uses 2 exponential moving averages that are indicated that are computed recursively, which means that today's exponential moving average depends on yesterday's, which itself depends on the day before. If you don't know too much about these, I'll link a video down below where I explain moving averages in detail. But anyways, what I mean by that is to guarantee that our exponential moving average computations are done well, we need to go fetch information quite far back in the past. And I'm going for 2 years, and that's going to be more than enough, as we will see. So you can see to access the web page that will give us the closing price of the pair that we're trading, I'm calling this command here, where you can see that I plug in the time frame, the symbol of our base currency and our quote currency that we define up here, and I'm giving the starting date. Note that I didn't ask for an ending date, which implies that I will download the data until now. And I'm storing this information into data. So let me run so we can see the result of these 2 prints. The first thing that I want to highlight is that I printed the URL address. So we have to scroll back up quite a lot because we downloaded quite a lot of data. Let me just copy this and paste that up here. And you can see that this here is indeed what we get there, which is what we store in our variable data. We could carry on, but at this point, there's a first subtlety that I need to highlight, and I will delete that and uncomment the next, which is the right way to do it. Even though we've taken this precaution of doing an URL call, there still sometimes can have a request error when, for example, the API is submerged with demands from around the world. And we need to make sure that when our trading bot is executing the code, well, it gets the information it needs and then do the buy and sell orders if it needs to do that. So to avoid just having a mistake and waiting, for example, for the next day for the bot to execute the code as it would do, what I'm going to do is to directly check if the downloading of this data has happened properly. So the best is for me to run this code, hoping we'll get the error coming out soon, which is not often the case, but let me get back at you when I get one. And there we go. I did see an error pop up, so let me go back up. And there we go. You can see that when I run the code at this point, what was stored in data and then printed is this dictionary here. And you can see that this dictionary has a keyword, MSG, where inside is written too many requests. So what my check does is that it checks if MSG is in the keys of data. And if it is, this comparison here returns a true. And if check is true, then the while loop triggers again. So you'd see as well that we have a true here. The print check gave us a true. So what happened, as I said, is that the while loop triggered again. But this time, the data that we downloaded didn't have the keyword MSG. So the check got a false. And we probably can see it at the end, which indeed we see here. Okay, then what we see here corresponds to the print that we have here. These are the standard functions that I used in my previous backtest videos to compile nicely all this open, close, high, low, volume, etc. data that we download from the website here. Note just one subtlety that differs from when one is backtesting is that we need at this point to reorder the data that we're downloading. So at the beginning of this table is the past data, while at the last rows is the most recent data. Let me clean this and we can move on. So with this data at hand, we can now compute our indicators for our trading strategy. So first what we do is to compute the values of our indicators. So let me execute the code and see the results of those two prints. So you can see that the first print, this data, we have indeed added the computation of our indicators to it. As usual, you see that at the very beginning, there was by definition not data previous to that. So that's why the EMA and the RSI computations can't be done and we have nones. But we see what is important is what we get currently. And actually, there's another subtlety here, is that I will be trading with the last closed candle. So not the current data, but actually the one just before that. So typically for my training bot, I will ask it to run this code every day at, for example, 5 minutes past midnight, because the new candles on the exchange generally start at midnight. So by asking 5 minutes after, I will be sure that I'm using the last closed candle. Let's double check that these values coincides properly with the current market information. And so let's have a look at TradingView. So right now, the last closing candle gives us an RSI of 59. So that would correspond to this candle. And we indeed see that the RSI is around 59. And we can check the two EMAs. So for the long-term one, it is just below, somewhere around 226. Yes, that is correct. And the short-term one is a bit above, somewhere around 1,229. And that's cool. That's indeed the case. And by the way, we can see that the short-term exponential moving average is above the long-term one, and the RSI is below 70. So that means technically we should be in the position to make a buy. We'll see that in a minute. Back to our code. And you can see that the second print of data prints this data, which I've changed to only storing the second to last row. And that you guessed that is because we only need to deal with that last closing candle. Okay, so I can remove this, clean this, and see the current result of our trading strategy. So let's see if entry is true and take profit is false. And indeed, that is the case. As we saw before, the short-term exponential moving average is above the long-term one and the RSI is below 70. So we are in the configuration of doing a buy. So that's why entry returns a true, but take profit returns a false. Okay, I can delete this, clean this, and we can move to the next section. To be able to trade, we need to fetch the information of the status of our account. So for example, our balances and also some market requirements. So we'll talk about this now. So let's have a look at this first part. You can see that to get the balances, I'm using the user client and notably this get account list. So let me run the code so we can see what comes out of this print. So this first print here of this get account list returns quite a bit of information. And I asked this for our quote currency, which gives us a few information, but really what is important to us is how much money we have available to trade. So that's why I'm selecting in this next line only the figure that is stored in available. Note that what comes out of this user get account is what is stored in a dictionary. And as you can see, this is in between two quotes. So that means it is a string. So that's why I'm converting it to a float before storing it into this balance quote and balance space. Then I'm printing that. And you can see here that for the moment, what I have available on this account that I'm doing these tests with you with is a bit more than $5 and a tiny amount of ETH. Let me actually show you that this is indeed the case. Let's come here and you can see that I came on this sub account where I'm doing this test, and on the trading account, you can indeed see that things correspond well. Don't worry, I will get into the details of all of this in the next episode. But there is something I now want to stress right now that's quite important, is that when you're trading, you will want to deposit some USDT, for example, if you want to trade with USDT. But that will not be enough, because this deposit, what it does, it opens the market possibility for USD to be exchanged in this sub account. And given that we're also trading ETH, that's why I also deposited a tiny amount. So if you want, these two currencies have been declared on this sub account. If, for example, you hadn't deposited USDT or you hadn't deposited ETH, the code would return an error saying it can't find the balance of Ethereum or USDT, even though looking at this page, it would trick you into thinking that it should find a zero balance. But no, because we're dealing with this API, we need to open these possibilities, and that is easily done by just putting a tiny little amount of the code that we're trading with. Okay, that was subtlety number one, but there's a few more I need to highlight. But before that, maybe it's time that we fetch the price of the coin we're trading with, because we're going to need to do some conversions between our quote coin and our base coin. So that will be done using the current price of Ethereum in this case. So to fetch the price, I use the market client and the function getTicker. You can see that here what I'm given is the pair that we're trading. And let me show you what comes out of this. Oh, I forgot to clean this first. So let me do that. And now we can run it again. So you can see that this getTicker returned quite a few prices, as it is customary when trading. So you have the best ask, the best bid, etc. But for this trading strategy, we are not going to worry too much about all this, and we will just fetch what is defined as price here. So that is why at this point in this other line, I'm just fetching price here. And you can see that indeed this second print did indeed return me this value. Great. Last two subtleties before we can do some buying and subselling together. And this is what I call minimum requirements. So basically what you have to understand is that when you're trading, there are some requirements you have to follow. That is typically a maximum amount you're allowed to buy or sell within a single order, but also what is the mathematical precision of the amount that you're selling or buying. In other words, because we are doing all these mass conversions, our numbers could have a lot of digits after the point, but exchanges don't want to have to deal with that. Actually, if you've already done some trading on an exchange, you would often see that it tells you that there's a minimum that you're allowed to sell. So this is kind of the same stuff. And to get all this information, you can see that I'm doing another URL call, this time on a different web page, but you can see that all this information still depends on the pair that we're trading. So let me print this information that we get from this web page. Again, I forgot to clean that previous part, so let me do that. And there we go. You can see that there is a maximum size that you can buy or sell for the base and for the quote currency. But this is not an amount that I will attain in the near future, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. Maybe one day, who knows? But what is important for us is kind of the opposite, is the minimum funds that we can trade with and the base increment. That is what I was talking about, this maximum precision, the amounts are allowed to have in our buy and sell orders. So you can see that I fetch this information and plug it here, and I do a little mathematical transformation using this function, which simply counts the number of digits after the point that we're allowed. Let me remove this, save, and show you what this min truncate is. So you can see that this min truncate corresponds to 7. So let's check if that is indeed the case in base increments. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Great. So that means this function we will use, you will see afterwards all along, will truncate any numbers that are after this last 1. So thanks to that, we will avoid any truncation error and our code will execute nicely. And as I've also mentioned, what we need to be careful of is the minimum funds. So you can see that I'm getting the minimum quote for a buy from this min funds here. And I'm also converting that into a minimum amount in the base currency. Note that I am using the truncate here, and I'm also doing the good conversions from string to numbers. So the minimum quote for buy is indeed 0.1 in USDT, and it corresponds to this in ETH. Okay, I think we are ready. We can finally move to our market orders. A few things to highlight for our orders. Here I'm just using this date time now so that when an order is made, we can print the time and date at which it happened. You can see to do a buy, well, we follow our trading strategy. So if entry is true and if there's enough balance with respect to those minimum requirements, then would the code execute the buy, and the same for the take profit for the sell. And also you can see that we're checking for this minimum requirements. And finally, I'm just for those testing right now, I'm also printing here. If neither of those two conditions are triggered, then we will have this little print. So how is an order made? Well, first of all, the amounts need to always be converted in the base currency. So that's why we have this balance divided by price here. And indeed, we're also truncating. And then to make an order, we use the trade client and this create market order method. And then the syntax is as follows. We give the trading pair, we give the side, so this is a buy, and we give the amount. And you can see that I'm doing a nice print to keep track of things. And for the sell, things are very similar. Note that we don't need to convert the amount because this is already Ethereum that we're selling. And for the create market order, we change the side. This is now a sell. Let me remove that print that I saw here and save. And I think we can just run the code and see what happens. And Ethereum was bought. And this shouldn't come as a surprise because we saw that on TradingView, we were in the position of buying and we saw that our entry variable was true while the take profit variable was false. And on top of that, we did have enough USDT to make the buy. So this if was triggered and the buy was made. We should check if indeed this did happen on our KuCoin account. So let's go to the web page and I actually need to refresh. And I need to come here on trading account. And you can see that our wallet is mostly in the form of Ethereum. Remember that sometimes because of those truncation requirements, one still has the other coin. So we have a tiny little amount of USDT left. Let's actually tweak the code so we trigger the reverse, so a sell. So we'll come up here and just write that entry is equal to false and now take profit is equal to true. And save. And let's run the code. And we do see that we have a sell. Okay, let me show you maybe the last possible case where both entry and take profit are false. And I will run it again. Patience is virtue. So indeed, because none of these conditions were met, the code went to the else and printed this. Okay, great. I think we're done. Feel free to play and tweak the code to implement your trading strategy. And if you find interesting stuff, keep me updated. Let me add that obviously for this test, I'm running the code manually like this with my terminal, but the whole point of a trading bot is for it to execute itself automatically. And this is what will be the subject of the next video. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to click that like button if you haven't already and subscribe for more content. Be sure not to miss the next and final episode of my crypto trading bot journey. That's where I'm going to make this trading bot become alive. For now, I think you could be interested in these. See you soon and take care.